and then ejector works on having this high pressure differential. So ejector works optimally when you have a high gas cooler outlet temperature. A adiabatic gas cooler and a parallel compressor system as well. Parallel works optimally when you're running at the high ambient condition. The
Mhm.
more flash gas, the more it can take care of it, the more savings, the more percentage of savings there are. So you basically, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you have adiabatic gas coolers and you make that work, you really need to think about if there is a need for any additional um, high ambient strategies. One thing that I think you see too little is everybody forget the low side strategies. So that's why I asked you about the ejectors. Like ejectors work very well on on your superheat side of life, on creating a higher saturated suction temperature, um, and that's a 365 that's non-dependent on ambient conditions. So there's a lot of strategies that's on the lower side around the liquid side, the evaporator, the receiver. That, in my mind, sometimes if you look at it, it's a 3%, 4% benefit compared to the standard side of life, but annualized, it's a all year round benefit. Um, I think technology shouldn't be sold for what they can do in an instant manner. Um, they should be sold what they can do for you on an annual basis. So I mean, even like I said, adiabatic gas coolers. At the end of the day, if you're going to look at it, they can bring you a 20% energy saving if you go and look at a really high transcritical operation. You're going to go and say like, okay, cool, we're sitting at an 86 plus ambient condition. Um, we can get 20% energy saving, but stretch that out over a year, maybe that technology brings you a 2-3% saving. Um, is that worthwhile? Is it doesn't make the system too complicated? So those are all the questions that you need to kind of answer. And to throw all these technologies onto one system, I think you're just complicating life, and I think you're just making it too hard for people to understand.
Well, I just want to bring this up for an example. So in case anyone's like, what the hell is a high pressure ejector system? What the hell is a low pressure ejector system? They can actually see it. So if you do go to YouTube and see this video, you will see an example. So here we have a high pressure ejector system that you were talking about. And then here is another example of now the low pressure ejector system.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how this worked until I actually had a talk with Ignacio from Kaiser, because this is basically similar to almost like an FTE tank, right? I mean, this is same, it's the same principle, right?
Yeah.
Because then they can raise the pressure. I think they, on the low pressure systems, they also float the flash tank bypass, or can't talk, flash tank pressure. They float that up, correct, when they're utilizing the low ejector system.
Yeah. Yeah. You will match it in the lift that you can get. Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, I just wanted to show that for an example. Basically the difference, where you can see they have this extra accumulator here, in the low side ejector system versus the high pressure. That's all I wanted to show. Sorry.
But it's no. That's good to know. But again, like I need to say, you need to. It's all these technologies are interesting, but you need to try and understand how they work. Um, in terms like what I'm trying to say is like the simple. Let's put it this way: the simplest system for CO2 that is available in the market is your standard DX transcritical booster system. Um, no parallel compression, no anything else. Some internal heat exchangers for subcooling, like we discussed in the beginning.
Mhm.
Like that is your simple system. Everybody understands DX. So the only thing that you need to learn, Brett, you would know from like training and stuff like that, you need to let people then understand the difference on the high pressure valve and the flash gas valve and how you control that receiver. That's the only difference. And transcritical operation, no pressure temperature correlation. Um, that's the teaching from HFC to CO2, and don't stress about the pressures. It's okay. Like once you pass that and you get your hands on, things go faster. I mean, all these other technologies do again, like I said, they bring a very high level of complexity in some cases. Um, and you need to understand, like you said, like the FTE, the low superheat ejector systems, um, all of that, they work, but you need to understand where they work from and how can you design your system. Um, it's always an interesting factor. It's one thing, those type of technologies was introduced because Europe predominantly had their cabinet specified at a very low operating temperature. So if you had a DX system in Europe, they would specify that you need to run for, sorry, I'm just making conversions here. So if you want a product temperature of, let's say, about 34F,
Mm-hmm.
which is just above freezing, your standard meat or veg and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, their cabinets would specify that you run at -8, which is, call it 18F,
Okay.
which is bad. I mean, that's shitty. That's very low saturated suction temperature for a fairly high product temperature.
Well,
But that's what the cabinet specified for a DX specified system. So once you can make a system semi-flooded, which is what the FTE and the low side ejector
ejector.
system do for
Yeah.
you, you can increase your saturated suction temperature. The interesting thing about the US is you guys got very good evaporators and you got very good cabinets, and your specification is already for 25 for the same product temperature.
Well, so we've had a problem with some of the manufacturers doing the engineering, and they'll engineer it. They'll engineer one case that's designed to run at, let's just say, a 26-degree Fahrenheit coil to get a 30-degree discharge air, because it basically has only a 4-degree TD. But then you still have to operate at that plus 16 or plus 18 for your lowest SST case is just typically your meat holding box, right? Typically those are hanging evaporators. They have a 10-degree TD, so you have to maintain 18 to maintain 28, right? 28-degree box. I haven't seen very many um, EPRs in CO2, and because of that, basically they'll size the coils for it running the 26-degree saturated versus the 18, and then find out that the orifice is not the correct size.
Mm.
So I mean, do you, in industrial and what you do on the regular, do you use or spec any EPRs in there to kind of mitigate some of that sizing issue?